Welcome to the Joyful Writer Podcast, a place for writers to nurture their creativity, rekindle their love for writing, and cultivate a joyful author mindset. I'm your host, China Pace. Hello, writers. Welcome to another episode of the Joyful Writer Podcast. Today, I want to talk about perfectionism. Now, writers are critically obsessed with perfection. The perfect book, perfect marketing strategy, perfect platform, perfect career. I've never met a writer who doesn't, in some way, strive after perfection, myself included. No matter how often we're told that we don't need to be perfect, no matter how many times we say we're going to believe it, we always end up falling back into the trap. But here's the thing, it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all struggle with this. And the only reason we do is because our writing is so important to us. We put our hearts and souls into the stories we dream up in our heads and the words we put on the page. And because our writing is so important to us, we want it to do well. That's completely natural and okay, and nothing to feel bad about. But even though perfectionism can stem from a good place, more often than not, it ends up hurting us. There are 3 ways I think perfectionism can hurt us the worst. The first way is that it sends the message to ourselves that we aren't good enough. You see, we're always going to fall short of perfection. Because we're human beings, that's a natural thing. But when we start viewing that natural human thing negatively, when we see it as a lack or a flaw, we judge ourselves relentlessly. We heap criticism on our efforts. We doubt every move and decision we make. And we kill ourselves trying to reach an impossible standard. I know I do. It also makes us intensely aware of other people, instead of focusing on running our own race. Even though we know that nobody's perfect, in our eyes, we're always going to be a bit more imperfect than everyone else. So we look at what other people are doing and internalize that, thinking that we must follow their path, since they are, seemingly, so much closer to perfection than we are. So instead of focusing on what's best for us and our individual path, we uphold what works for everyone else as the one final truth, the absolute of what we should do, have to do, need to do. It doesn't matter if we work better by discovery writing. If someone says we need an outline to succeed, perfectionism will tell us that's true. And even if we're uncomfortable with a certain marketing strategy, if everyone else says it's the only way to make it as an author, perfectionism won't leave us alone until we've pushed ourselves over the edge in order to reach that goal. And it goes without saying that perfectionism stifles creativity. As writers, our work is primarily in our heads. Whether we write fiction or nonfiction, our words and ideas live in our thoughts, in our imagination, sometimes long before we ever even set out to put them on paper. And when we finally do put them on paper, a lot of mental energy goes into it. That energy that powers our creativity, it's precious. But more often than we realize, we waste that energy on negative thinking. Instead of loving what we write, we criticize it. Instead of embracing the intrinsic value of what we create, we look at our work with a disapproving eye and vow never to be proud of it until it's made perfect. And instead of being secure in ourselves, we measure the worth of our writing by other people's ideas of perfection. And when we do this, we think we're helping our book. We think we're making ourselves better writers. We think by following all these so-called rules, we'll be successful. But we're actually stifling ourselves. We're making writing a place of fear and stress and never-ending striving. So how do we fix it? Well, I've discovered 3 tips to help me with perfectionism, and I hope they'll be helpful to you too. The first one is joy. Now, I am convinced that joy needs to be at the center of all creativity, writing included. Happy writers just write better books. I mean, being a writer is not an easy job. In fact, it's downright hard. Author J.B. Priestley equated writing to mental pregnancy with successive difficult deliveries. That sounds pretty accurate to me. Thomas Mann said a writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than it is for other people. And George Orwell described writing as a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. That may seem like an exaggeration, but it's true. In other words, being a writer is already innately hard. We shouldn't add extra unnecessary stress to it. The only way to keep writing sustainable is to cultivate as much joy as possible. After all, if we're going to undertake such a challenging career anyway, we might as well have fun while doing it. So how do we cultivate joy in our writing life? One way is to fill our well with positivity about our writing and ourselves as writers. Be supportive of the work you do. Don't put yourself down. Nothing can sap the joy out of you as well as self-criticism can. Of course, it's normal to feel like your writing sucks. I mean, I feel that at least once every day. But when those feelings arise, try to actively challenge them. Switch your focus. Instead of picking out every flaw in your writing, pick out every good and admirable thing in your writing. One of the things that I like to do when I feel extra down on my work is to handwrite a list of all the things I like about what I'm writing, all the things that excite me or make me happy. Another way to cultivate joy is to get back to the basic, beginning reasons of why you love writing so much. If you're a writer, it's probably because you love it. Most of us do. Regardless of if you first felt that love as a kid, or if you experienced it later in life, it happens to all of us. How did it happen to you? When did you first realize that creating and expressing your thoughts through the written word were what you wanted to do, what you loved with all your heart? Was it when you jotted down your feelings in a journal? Or when you read a book that wowed you? Try to rekindle that feeling. Reread a book or author that really inspires you, that really gets you excited about storytelling. Write a journal entry about why you love writing. The point is just to focus on those positive, excited feelings. But sometimes we can't be joyful. Sometimes we're tired and it's extra hard to seek out those positive things. Sometimes even finding joy can seem like another task on our perfectionist to-do list. I've been there. Sometimes we just need to rest and relax. When that happens, take the pressure off yourself. What is perfectionism if not the pressure to be perfect? Let go of that pressure. Remember that you don't have to be perfect. You really don't. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to write your book a certain way or publish your book a certain way. You can do what you're comfortable with, what feels right to you, and absolutely succeed at it. Because if you really love what you're doing, that comes through in your writing. That's what will be important to your readers. Lastly, I just want to say, focus on your own path. What would happen if we created our own flawed, messy version of perfection? What if we agreed with ourselves that our ideal of perfection was in fact accepting that we'll never be perfect and refusing to strive after it ever again? What if we stopped letting others decide for us what perfection means? Perfection doesn't have to be writing an amazing book that hits all the right elements of a great story perfectly. Your version of perfection can just be to write a book that you're proud of, to write a book that brings you joy, to write a book that makes your readers feel something, even if it's messy, even if it breaks a bunch of rules, even if it goes against the grain, even if it's not what the experts are urging you to do. If we choose to follow our own path and focus on our individual journey, perfection can be anything we want it to be. It doesn't have to be what everyone else calls perfection. It can even be anti-perfection. Create your own thing, and then focus on it. It's no secret that we get more of what we focus on. If we're focused on the negative, we'll see the negative everywhere we look. If we're focused on the positive, we'll find more and more joy in our lives. The same applies to our writing lives. We need to focus on the path that we're on, and be proud of it, and embrace it, and find joy every step of the way. Now, I hope that this has encouraged you and helped you see that perfectionism doesn't have to be what we think it is. It doesn't have to be something to be shameful of. It doesn't even have to be a bad thing. We can create our own perfection. We can shun perfection altogether. The point is just to enjoy what you're doing, to make writing a safe, peaceful place, to write the books that you want to write, publish them and market them the way you want to, and have the author career of your dreams. That's all for now. I'm your host, China Pace. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.